Aelith didn't know the man waiting at the altar had 3 weeks to live. She didn't know the council had sold her for 40 silver coins and a mountain pass treaty. And she definitely didn't know that saying 2 simple words would bind her to a curse older than the kingdom itself. All she knew was that her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The ceremonial dress was too heavy. Ivory silk embroidered with silver thread that caught the candlelight and made her feel like a ghost. It had belonged to her mother once, before the fever took her. Before Aelith became just another mouth to feed in a pack that could barely feed itself. Thornwick had been dying for years. Crops failing. Borders shrinking. The young wolves leaving for stronger territories while the elders clung to traditions that couldn't fill empty stomachs. When the offer came from Valdris, the council hadn't even pretended to deliberate. A bride for their alpha. In exchange, protection, resources, survival. Aelith had learned about the arrangement 3 days ago. She'd turned 18 2 days before that. Now she stood in a stone corridor outside the great hall of a castle she'd never seen, in a kingdom she'd only heard whispered about in fearful tones, waiting to marry a man whose face she wouldn't recognize if he passed her on the street. The rumors painted him in shadow. They called him the Hollow King, said his touch could wither crops, and his gaze could stop a heart mid-beat. They said he'd killed his own brother to take the throne. They said he was cursed by an ancient bloodline, rotting from the inside out, and that every healer who'd tried to save him had fled or worse. They said he was looking for a bride because the last 3 had died. It's time. Aelith turned. The woman who spoke was severe, sharp-featured, dressed in the deep burgundy of Valdris nobility. She hadn't offered her name, only clipped instructions and cold looks since Aelith had arrived at dawn. Already? Aelith's voice came out smaller than she intended. The Alpha doesn't like to be kept waiting. The woman's eyes swept over Aelith with barely concealed disdain. Though I suppose he's used to disappointment. The doors groaned open and candlelight spilled into the corridor. The great hall stretched before her, cavernous and cold, lined with figures in dark formal wear who turned to watch her entrance. Hundreds of eyes, hundreds of strangers. And at the far end, standing before an altar carved from black stone, a figure that made her breath catch. She couldn't see his face clearly. The distance and the flickering shadows conspired against her. But she could see enough. Tall, broad-shouldered despite a posture that suggested exhaustion. Dark hair falling across a pale forehead, and eyes. Even from here she could feel them fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to run. Aelith took her first step forward, and somewhere deep in her chest, something she'd spent her whole life suppressing stirred awake. Up close, he looked like death warmed over. That was Aelith's first coherent thought as she reached the altar and finally saw the Alpha King of Valdris clearly. Calum Valdris, they'd called him in the whispered briefings. 31 years old. Unmarried until today. Dying. The last part, at least, was obviously true. His skin held the pallor of someone who hadn't seen sunlight in months. Dark circles carved hollows beneath eyes that burned fever-bright, pale silver ringed with exhaustion. He was handsome in a ruined way, like a cathedral after a fire. You could see what he'd been before whatever was killing him took hold. But it was his stillness that unnerved her most. He watched her approach without a flicker of expression, without shifting his weight or adjusting his stance. Perfectly, unnaturally still, like a predator conserving every ounce of energy for the strike that mattered. "You're younger than I expected." His voice was low, rough-edged, carrying an exhaustion that seemed bone-deep. "I just turned 18. She didn't know why she said it. A defense, maybe. A reminder that she hadn't chosen this. "I know." Something flickered in those storm-gray eyes. "I'm sorry for that." The apology caught her off guard. Before she could respond, the officiant began speaking, ancient words in the old tongue that Aelith barely understood. She repeated the phrases she'd been taught, her voice mechanical, her mind racing. This is happening. This is actually happening. Then Caleb took her hand to speak his vows, and the world tilted sideways. The moment his skin touched hers, heat flooded through her, sharp and electric and wrong. Images flashed behind her eyes, a dark room, chains, a woman screaming, blood on stone, and she gasped, trying to pull away. His grip tightened. Not painful, but firm, grounding. Breathe. His voice cut through the chaos in her skull. Breathe through it. How did he know? The visions had always been her secret, her curse, the reason her father had made her promise to never, ever let anyone see what she could do. Touch an object, see its past. Touch a person, see their pain. She'd been so careful. 18 years of gloves and distance and excuses. And this stranger, this dying king, knew in an instant. The officiant was still speaking, but Caleb leaned closer, his lips near her ear. I knew your mother, before she was sent to Thornwick, before they made her forget what she was. Aelith's blood turned to ice. We'll talk after the ceremony. He pulled back, his expression carefully neutral for the watching crowd. But understand this, you weren't chosen at random. And I'm not the only one who knows what runs in your bloodline. The officiant asked for her final vow. Aelith stared at the man before her, this hollow king who knew secrets about her mother, about herself, secrets she'd never been told. Her instincts screamed to run. But where would she go? Back to a pack that had sold her? Forward into a mystery she couldn't ignore? She thought of her mother's face, the fever madness in her eyes at the end, the words she'd whispered. They'll come for you someday. Don't let them see. Don't ever let them see. I do, Aelith said, and sealed her fate. The wedding feast was a blur of faces she didn't know and food she couldn't taste. Aelith sat beside Caleb at the high table, hyper-aware of every inch of space between them. He ate little, drank less, and deflected the council members who approached with a cold efficiency that bordered on contempt. Several times she caught him pressing a hand to his chest, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly before his expression smoothed again. Whatever was killing him, it was getting worse. When the last toast had been made and the hall finally began to empty, he stood and offered her his hand. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. She followed him through corridors of dark stone and flickering torches, past guards who bowed low and servants who averted their eyes. Finally, he stopped before a heavy oak door and pushed it open to reveal a private study lined with books and maps. Sit. He gestured to a chair by the fire. Please. Aelith sat, her spine rigid. Caleb closed the door and leaned against it, as if standing required effort he was carefully rationing. The firelight carved his features into something stark, almost skeletal. You have questions. You know what I can do. It wasn't a question. Yes. It's called bloodsight. The ability to read memories through touch. It runs in certain old bloodlines. He paused. Your mother had it. Stronger than anyone I'd ever encountered. You knew her. Aelith's voice was barely a whisper. She was my healer. Before the council discovered what she was and decided she was too dangerous to keep close to power. His jaw tightened. They wiped her memories and sent her to the most remote pack they could find, hoping the bloodline would die with her. They didn't count on her having a daughter. Aelith's head spun. Her mother had been a healer, a memory reader, and they'd destroyed her for it. Why are you telling me this? Caleb pushed off from the door, moving to the window where moonlight carved his profile in silver. Because I'm dying, and I need your help. I'm not a healer. No, but you can see what I can't. He turned to face her. 3 years ago, someone cursed me, poisoned my blood with something no healer can identify because they can't trace its origin. It's killing me slowly, and when I'm gone, the council will tear Valdris apart fighting for power. His eyes held hers. I don't care about my own life, but I care about my people, and I need to know who did this before I die, so I can stop them from destroying everything I've protected. You want me to touch you, see the curse's origin. Eventually, yes. He moved closer, stopping an arm's length away. But I won't force you. This marriage was arranged without your consent. The council bought you like livestock, and I'm sorry for my part in that. He exhaled slowly. So here's my offer. Stay for 30 days. Help me find the traitor. And if at the end you want to leave, I'll annul the marriage and send you home with enough gold to buy your freedom 10 times over. And if I refuse right now? Then you leave tonight. I'll tell the council the marriage was consummated and you're returning to Thornwick as an emissary. They'll be angry, but they won't touch you. You have my word. Aelith studied him, the exhaustion in his frame, the resignation in his voice, and beneath it all, something she hadn't expected. Hope. Fragile. Almost hidden. But there. 30 days, she repeated. Your choice. No one else's. She thought about Thornwick, the council that had sold her, the life waiting there, if you could call it a life. Then she thought about her mother, about secrets erased and bloodlines buried. If I stay, Aelith said slowly, I want the truth. All of it. About my mother. About what I am. About everything you know. Something shifted in Calem's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Deal. He extended his hand. Aelith hesitated. Her gift meant touching him would show her things. Painful things. Private things. But she needed to know if he was telling the truth. She took his hand. And the visions hit her like a tidal wave. The visions came in fragments. Shattered glass. Burning villages. A boy no older than 10 watching his parents die while shadows circled. Then older. Harder. A young man standing over a body. Blood on his hands. Grief carved into every line of his face. A brother. He killed his brother. But not the way the rumors said. Not for power. For mercy. The curse had already taken hold, twisting his brother into something monstrous, and Kylem had ended it with a blade through the heart while tears streamed down his face. Then the pain hit. Aelith felt it like fire in her veins, a slow poison eating him from the inside out. 3 years of agony he never showed. 3 years of dying by inches while holding a kingdom together through sheer will. She gasped and wrenched her hand free. Calem caught her before she fell, his arms steadying her with surprising strength for a man so close to death. Easy. Breathe. Your brother. Her voice cracked. You didn't murder him. You saved him. Something in his expression shattered, just for a moment before he rebuilt his walls. The council needed a monster on the throne, a king they could control through fear and guilt. He released her gently, stepping back. The truth was inconvenient. Aelith's legs trembled. She'd felt his pain, his grief, his loneliness. 3 years of carrying weight that would have crushed anyone else. How are you still standing? Stubbornness, mostly. The ghost of a smile crossed his lips. And now, perhaps hope. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Unspoken, but undeniable. She'd seen inside him, felt what he felt. And instead of recoiling, she found herself leaning closer. He noticed. His breath caught almost imperceptibly. You should rest. His voice had roughened. There's a room prepared for you. We'll start tomorrow. Calem. Tomorrow. He stepped back again, putting distance between them like it physically cost him. You've seen enough of my darkness for one night. A servant appeared as if summoned by magic, a young woman with kind eyes who introduced herself as Marin. As Aelith followed her out, she glanced back. Calem stood where she'd left him, one hand pressed to his chest, watching her go with an expression she couldn't decipher. The air between them had shifted, a crack in the walls they'd both built. And beneath her exhaustion, beneath the fear and confusion, Aelith felt it again. That stirring, that awakening. Like a part of her recognized a part of him. Aelith woke to sunlight streaming through windows twice her height. For a moment she forgot where she was. The bed was impossibly soft, the sheets smelled of lavender, and the ceiling above her was painted with constellations she didn't recognize. Then memory crashed back, and she sat up so fast her head spun. Married, she was married, to a dying king, in a castle full of strangers. A knock interrupted her spiral. Marin entered with a breakfast tray and a warm smile that felt genuine rather than performed. His Majesty thought you might want to explore today. Get your bearings before you begin your work. She set the tray on a small table by the window. I'm to be your guide, if you'll have me. Aelith studied the young woman. Freckled, perhaps a year or two older than herself, with auburn hair braided simply. Nothing like the severe woman from yesterday. You're not afraid of me? Marin's eyebrows rose. Should I be? The others look at me like I'm a plague. The council's people. Marin's expression flickered with something like disgust. They're afraid of anything they can't control. But the rest of us? She shrugged. We've watched our king dying for 3 years while they did nothing. If you can help him, you're not a plague, you're a miracle. The castle, Aelith discovered, was nothing like the cold fortress she'd imagined. Yes, the stones were dark, and the corridors vast enough to echo. But there was warmth here, too. Kitchens where cooks laughed and pressed fresh bread into her hands. A library with books stacked floor to ceiling and windows designed to catch the afternoon light. Gardens where flowers grew despite the mountain cold, tended by elderly wolves who nodded respectfully as she passed. And everywhere, she saw evidence of Calem's care. Orphan children learning trades in the craftsmen's quarters. Widows given homes and purpose in the weaving halls. A healer's wing that served anyone who needed it, regardless of rank or ability to pay. He built most of this himself, Marin said, as they walked through a courtyard where young wolves trained under patient instructors. When he took the throne, Valdris was nearly as broken as Thornwick. The old king, his father, had bled it dry. Calem spent 10 years rebuilding. Then the curse hit, and she trailed off. Aelith watched a girl no older than 12 land a perfect sparring strike, her instructor praising her form. The council, they want him dead. It wasn't a question. Marin's silence was answer enough. That night, Aelith ate dinner in her room, thinking about everything she'd seen. The king the rumors painted as a monster. The reality of a man who'd poured everything into protecting his people while poison slowly devoured him from within. Someone had done this to him deliberately. Someone who wanted Valdris weak. Someone who benefited from his suffering. And tomorrow, she would start hunting them. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like purpose. Like maybe, for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps me create more stories like this one. The investigation began in Calem's private study. He'd gathered objects from the night he was cursed. A torn cloak, a shattered goblet, a ceremonial dagger with a blade still stained dark. Each item lay on velvet cloth, waiting for her touch. The curse hit during my brother's funeral rites, Calem explained, his voice carefully neutral. I thought it was grief at first, the weakness, the pain. By the time the healers realized what was happening, the poison had rooted too deep to extract. Aelith circled the table, her skin prickling with the residual energy radiating from each object. And no one saw anything? No one suspicious? Half the kingdom attended the funeral. Allies, enemies, everyone in between. His jaw tightened. I've spent 3 years investigating through conventional means. Every lead goes cold. Every witness has convenient gaps in their memory. Memory gaps. Aelith's eyes narrowed. Deliberate ones? I believe so. Someone covered their tracks thoroughly. She reached for the goblet first. The moment her fingers closed around the cold metal, visions flooded in. A great hall draped in black. Mourners in dark formal wear. Calum at the front, rigid with grief, accepting a goblet from a servant. He drinks. The liquid tastes of honey and something bitter beneath. No one notices the figure in the shadows. Watching, waiting, lips moving in silent incantation. Aelith focused harder, trying to see the figure's face. The shadows resisted, deliberately obscuring, magically enforced. But she caught a detail. A ring on the figure's hand. Heavy gold, engraved with a serpent consuming its own tail. She released the goblet, gasping. What did you see? Someone at the funeral. They enchanted the drink. I couldn't see their face, but they wore a ring. She described it, watching Calum's expression shift from concentration to something colder. The Ouroboros seal. It's used by the Inner Council. Only 7 people have the right to wear it. Your council members cursed you? One of them. Possibly more. He moved to his desk, pulling out a leather journal. The current members are Lord Venner, Lady Sethis, Councillor Bryn, High Treasurer Mordecai, General Chiren, Keeper of Laws Thessa, and... He stopped. And Regent Halvard. My father's oldest advisor, the man who taught me to rule. Aelith heard the pain beneath his controlled tone. You trust him? I trusted all of them once. Calum's laugh was bitter. 3 years of dying has clarified my judgment. She reached for the dagger next. The visions here were older, fragmented. Glimpses of the blade being forged. Blessed. Used in ceremonies spanning generations. But threaded through the legitimate memories was something darker. A private chamber. The dagger laid across a map of Valderis. 3 figures in hooded robes, their faces obscured, speaking in low voices. The curse will take months to kill him, perhaps years. We need patience. Patience? A woman's voice, sharp with contempt. Every day he lives, he grows stronger. The people love him. If we wait too long, the people's love means nothing against proper leverage. The third voice, calm, measured, familiar. When he's desperate enough, he'll accept any solution we offer, including a bride from a bloodline he believes can save him. And if the girl actually helps him? Silence. Then, she won't. Her mother's power was stripped before the girl was born. She's a decoy, a distraction to keep him hoping while the poison finishes its work. Aelith dropped the dagger like it burned. Aelith? Calum was at her side instantly. What is it? Her mind raced. They thought she was powerless. They'd planned this. Her arrival. The marriage. Everything. A false hope to keep him passive while he died. But they were wrong. Her mother's gift hadn't been stripped. It had been hidden, passed down in secret, nurtured in silence. They didn't know what she could actually do. The curse, she said slowly, piecing it together. It wasn't just assassination. It was a coup. They're waiting for you to die so they can control whoever comes next. Who? I couldn't see faces. But there were 3 of them. 2 men and a woman, all wearing those rings. She met his eyes. And Calum. They know about me. They're the ones who suggested the marriage. They think my bloodline is broken, that I can't actually help you. Something dangerous flickered in his expression. Not anger at her, but at them. The wolves who'd circled him for 3 years, pretending loyalty while counting down to his death. Then we have an advantage, he said quietly. They think you're harmless. What do we do? His smile was sharp enough to cut. We let them keep thinking that, and we hunt them down one by one. The game had changed. and Aelith was no longer a pawn. She was a weapon they'd placed in their enemies' hands. The next 2 weeks passed in a rhythm Aelith hadn't expected. Mornings, she worked with the objects Calum provided. Belongings of council members, gifts they'd given him, items from the night of the curse. Each vision revealed another thread in the conspiracy. Lady Sethis had been present at 3 secret meetings. Lord Venner had purchased rare poisons through black market channels. And Regent Halvard, the man Calum had trusted most, appeared in nearly every vision like a shadow stitched to the plot. Afternoons, she rested while Calum handled the kingdom's affairs, pretending strength he didn't have. She'd learned to read his tells now. The slight tremor in his hands, the way he braced against furniture when he thought no one was watching, the moments when pain flickered across his features before iron will suppressed it. Evenings, they talked. It started as strategy sessions, mapping conspirators and planning their next moves. But somewhere along the way, the conversations had drifted. He told her about his childhood, about the brother he'd loved and lost, about the weight of a crown he'd never wanted. She told him about Thornwick, about her mother's final days, about the loneliness of hiding what she was. They understood each other in ways that should have been impossible after so short a time. On the 15th night, Aelith found him on the western balcony, staring at the mountains beneath a sky thick with stars. His breathing was labored, worse than usual, and when she approached, he didn't turn. "You should be resting," she said softly. "So should you." He glanced at her, and the moonlight caught the exhaustion in his eyes. "But sleep doesn't come easily when you're counting down your remaining nights." Her chest tightened. "Don't talk like that." "Like what? Like a man who's dying?" His laugh was hollow. "I've made peace with it, Aelith. I just need to finish this first. Expose the traitors. Protect my people. Then I can—" "Stop." She moved closer, close enough to touch. "You're not dying. Not if I can help it. The curse is too deep. Every healer has said, I'm not a healer." She took his hand, felt the familiar spark that came with contact, but pushed past it. "But I've been studying. The curse isn't just poison. It's memory. Someone bound their hatred into your blood, and it's feeding on your life force." Her grip tightened. "If I can find the source memory, the original moment of casting, I might be able to sever it." Calum stared at her. "That would mean going deeper than you've ever gone, touching the curse itself. It could kill you. It could. I won't let you risk." "It's my choice." She echoed his words from their first night. No one else's. Something broke behind his eyes. The control he'd maintained so carefully, the distance he'd kept to protect her, all of it crumbled. "Why?" His voice was raw. "Why would you risk yourself for a dying king you've known for 2 weeks?" Aelith reached up, her fingers brushing his jaw. He shuddered at the touch. "Because you're not just a dying king to me. Not anymore." The kiss, when it came, wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, the release of tension that had been building since the moment their hands first touched. He pulled her against him like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the world, and she kissed him back with everything she had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Calum pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm falling in love with you," he whispered, "and it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because I have nothing to offer. No future. No." She kissed him again, softer this time. "Let me worry about the future. You focus on staying alive long enough to see it." He held her close, his heartbeat unsteady against hers. And Aelith made a silent vow. She would save him, whatever it cost. The attack came 3 nights later. Aelith was in the library, cross-referencing her visions with historical records, when the first scream echoed through the castle. Then another. Then the clash of steel. She ran. The corridors were chaos. Guards fighting shadowed figures in black, servants fleeing, torches guttering as something dark swept through the halls. Magic. Old and wrong, the same signature she'd felt in Calem's curse. Aelith! Marin appeared, blood on her temple, eyes wild. They're after you. The king sent me to... A shadow detached from the wall behind her. Aelith didn't think. She grabbed Marin and pulled, and the blade meant for her friend's throat sliced air instead. The assassin recovered instantly, lunging again, but a guard intercepted, buying them seconds to run. They made it to Calem's study. He was already there, pale but standing, sword drawn despite the tremor in his grip. They breached the eastern wall, he said grimly. 30, maybe 40 attackers, professionally trained. This isn't just assassination. Aelith's mind raced. They're covering their tracks. They know I've been reading objects, seeing their conspiracy. They're trying to eliminate me before I can identify them all. A boom shook the castle. Dust rained from the ceiling. They're bringing down the walls. Calem moved to the window and his expression hardened. The council chambers. They're destroying evidence. Then we need to get there first. Aelith, no. I need to get you out. If they destroy everything, we lose our proof. The conspiracy survives. They'll just try again with the next king. She grabbed his arm. You said I was a weapon. Let me be one. Conflict warred on his face. Then he nodded sharply. They moved through the castle together, Calem cutting down anyone who stood in their path despite his weakness, Aelith guiding them through servant passages Marin had shown her. Twice they nearly died. Twice his body failed him, and she held him upright, refusing to let him fall. They reached the council chambers as flames began to lick the walls. Inside, 3 figures stood over a burning pyre of documents and objects. 2 men, 1 woman, all wearing the Ouroboros ring. Lord Venner, Lady Sethis, and Regent Halvard, his face twisted with fury as he saw them enter. You should be dead, Halvard spat. Both of you. Sorry to disappoint. Calem raised his sword. It's over, Halvard. Whatever you're planning. What I'm planning is saving this kingdom from your weakness. Halvard's voice dripped contempt. 3 years I've waited for the curse to finish you. 3 years of watching you cling to life through sheer stubbornness. And now you bring this girl, this broken bloodline, thinking she can save you? She's not broken, Calem said quietly. You just wanted her to be. Halvard's eyes snapped to Aelith, and she saw understanding dawn. The visions. She actually has the gift. He laughed, cold and sharp. Well, that changes things. He raised his hand, and dark energy crackled around his fingers. Kill the king. Take the girl alive. Her bloodline will serve our purposes just as well as her mother's did. The shadows moved, and everything went dark. Aelith woke in chains, stone walls, no windows, the smell of damp and old blood. The cold seeped through her thin dress, and somewhere above, water dripped in a slow, maddening rhythm. Her wrists burned where iron cuffs bit into her skin, and her head throbbed with the after effects of whatever magic Halvard had used. She wasn't alone. Easy, Marin's voice, weak but present. They threw us in together. Some kind of holding cell beneath the east tower. Calem? Aelith's voice cracked. Where's... I don't know. They separated us. I heard fighting, then nothing. Panic clawed at her chest. If Calem was dead, if the curse and the battle had finally taken him... No, she couldn't think like that. She tested the chains. Solid iron, bolted to the wall, too strong to break. But iron conducted memory too, and these chains were old. How many prisoners had worn them before her? Aelith closed her eyes and reached. Visions cascaded through her. Decades of suffering, desperation, rage. But threaded through the darkness were moments of escape. A prisoner who'd found a loose bolt, a guard who'd been bribed, a tunnel behind a false stone. She pulled back, gasping. Marin. 3rd stone from the left, bottom row. Can you reach it? Marin shuffled closer, her own chains giving just enough slack. I think, yes, it's loose. Push it. There's a passage behind. It took precious minutes. Minutes where footsteps echoed above them and voices argued about what to do with the prisoners. But finally, the stone gave way, revealing a narrow tunnel carved into the earth. Go, Aelith said. Find the guards loyal to Calum. Tell them what happened. I'm not leaving you. You have to. I can't fit through with these chains, and someone needs to. The cell door crashed open. Halvard stood in the entrance, flanked by Venner and Sethis. Behind them, dragged between two guards, was Calum. Alive, but barely. Blood matted his dark hair, and his breathing was shallow, ragged. Touching, Halvard said, noting the displaced stone. But pointless. He gestured, and the guards threw Calum to the ground at Aelith's feet. She lunged for him, chains snapping taut. What do you want? What I've always wanted. Control. Halvard crouched before her, close enough that she could smell the decay of dark magic on his skin. Your mother was supposed to give me that. Her gift was extraordinary. She could not only read memories but alter them. Do you have any idea what that power could achieve? I could rewrite history, make anyone believe anything, but she refused to cooperate, so I had her mind wiped and sent away. And cursed her son out of spite? The curse wasn't spite, it was strategy. Halvard smiled coldly. Calum was too strong, too beloved. I needed him weakened, desperate, and now I need you to finish what your mother refused to start. I'll die first. Perhaps. But will he? Halvard stood and nodded to Lady Sethis, who raised a hand crackling with the same dark energy as before. The curse can be accelerated. Instead of weeks, he'll have hours. Minutes, if I'm feeling impatient. Calum stirred, his eyes finding hers. Even now, dying on a stone floor, he shook his head. Don't do it. I'll count to 10, Halvard said pleasantly. Then Sethis tears what's left of his life away. 1. Aelith's mind raced. 2. She couldn't alter memories like her mother, but she could do something else. Something she'd never tried. 3. Every object held memory, and memory was just energy, stored and waiting. 4. The chains. Decades of rage and suffering compressed into iron. 5. She didn't need to read it. She needed to release it. 6. Aelith closed her eyes and stopped resisting the darkness. Instead, she pulled it in. Every scream, every death, every moment of despair that had soaked into these chains over 100 years. 7. The iron began to heat. 8. Halvard frowned. What are you? 9. Aelith opened her eyes and they burned white. Stop. The word wasn't spoken. It was unleashed. A shockwave of accumulated memory and pain exploding outward from her body. The chains shattered. Halvard flew backward, slamming into the wall. Sethis crumpled. Venner screamed as white fire licked across his skin. And in the chaos, Marin slipped through the tunnel. Aelith collapsed the moment the power left her. Every nerve screamed. Her vision swam, darkness eating at the edges. She'd channeled too much, pushed past every limit her mother had taught her to respect. But she was free. She crawled to Calum, pulling his head into her lap. His breathing was thready, his skin ice cold, and she could feel the curse writhing inside him, accelerated by Sethis' magic. Stay with me, she whispered. Please. Halvard groaned, pushing himself upright. Blood dripped from his forehead, but his eyes were clear and furious. Impressive, he spat, but you've only delayed the inevitable. He raised his hand, dark energy gathering, and an arrow sprouted from his shoulder. Halvard screamed, spinning toward the door, where General Kieran stood with a drawn bow and 20 soldiers at his back. The council is dissolved, Kieran announced coldly, by order of the king. The king is dying, Halvard snarled. I'm trying to save. You're trying to seize power while murdering your sovereign. Kieran's voice held no emotion. I've served this kingdom for 30 years. I won't watch you destroy it. Marin appeared behind the soldiers, pale but triumphant. She'd made it. She'd found the loyalists. Halvard looked between the soldiers, the fallen conspirators, and Aelith holding the barely breathing king. For a moment she thought he might surrender. Instead, he laughed. You think this ends here? The curse will finish him within the hour, and without an heir, without a clear succession, Valdris will tear itself apart anyway. His smile was poison. I may die, but so does your precious king. No. Aelith's voice was raw but steady. He doesn't. She placed her hands on Calem's chest, over his heart. Aelith, don't. Marin started. But Aelith was already diving. Into the curse. Into the writhing darkness that had been eating him for 3 years. She felt it recoil from her touch. Felt it lash out with claws of ice and fire. She pushed deeper. There. At the center. The source memory. Halvard standing over a bleeding sacrifice, speaking words of binding, pouring his hatred into a goblet meant for a grieving king. The moment of casting, preserved like a fossil in poison, Aelith wrapped her consciousness around it, and pulled. The curse fought. It tore at her, shredding pieces of herself she'd never get back. She felt her mother's voice, distant but warm. You are stronger than you know, little one. Trust yourself. She pulled harder. Something snapped. The curse unraveled, dissolving into nothing, and Aelith was thrown back into her body with a force that stole her breath. Calem gasped. Color flooded his face. His eyes flew open, clear and bright, the fevered haze gone for the first time since she'd known him. He sat up, staring at his hands like he'd never seen them before. It's gone, he breathed. The pain is... He looked at Aelith, crumpled beside him, barely conscious. What did you do? She smiled weakly. Saved you. Obviously. Then everything went dark. Aelith woke to sunlight and the smell of flowers. She was in her chambers, buried in blankets, her body aching but whole. Marin dozed in a chair by the window, and on the bedside table sat a vase of mountain blooms that definitely hadn't been there before. You're awake. Calem stood in the doorway, looking more alive than she'd ever seen him. The pallor was gone, the exhaustion, the carefully hidden tremors, all of it erased. He looked like the king he was meant to be. Strong, vital, and devastatingly handsome. And he was looking at her like she'd hung the stars. How long? She asked, her voice rasping. 4 days. He crossed to her bedside, sitting on the edge carefully like she might break. The healers weren't sure you'd wake. You channeled more power than any blood seer in recorded history. Seemed necessary at the time? His laugh was soft, wondering. You nearly killed yourself to save me. You would have done the same? Yes, I would have. He took her hand, and for the first time she felt no visions, no pain, just warmth and the steady beat of his pulse. Halvard and the others are awaiting trial. Kieran has taken over council operations until we can rebuild, and I've already signed the annulment papers. Aelith's heart stuttered. What? I promised you 30 days and freedom. It's been 22. His thumb traced circles on her palm. The curse is broken. The traitors are captured. You fulfilled every part of our agreement and more. You're free to go. She stared at him. That's what you want? For me to leave? No. The word came rough, almost broken. What I want is for you to stay. What I want is to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. But I won't trap you, Aelith. Not with obligation, not with duty, not with anything. His eyes held hers. If you stay, I need it to be because you choose it. Because you want me, not my kingdom or my gratitude or... She kissed him. It was awkward and desperate and probably too much movement for someone who'd been unconscious for 4 days. But she didn't care. She kissed him until they were both breathless, until his arms wrapped around her and held her like he'd never let go. "I choose you," she said against his lips. "Not the kingdom, not the crown. You, the man who gave me choices when everyone else took them away." His smile was sunrise after endless night. "Marry me. For real this time. Not an arrangement. Not a contract. Just us." "Yes." He kissed her again, softer now, full of promise, and for the first time in her life, Aelith felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The second wedding was nothing like the first. No cold cathedral, no stranger's stairs, just the mountain garden at sunset, strung with lanterns, filled with people who had become family over the past months. Marin stood beside Aelith as her witness. General Kieran stood with Kaelum, and when they spoke their vows, they wrote them themselves, promises of partnership and choice, of love freely given and received. When Calum kissed her, the crowd cheered, and somewhere in the celebration that followed, Aelith found herself standing on the western balcony, looking at the stars. Calum found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Regretting it already?" She laughed. "Never." "Good. Because you're stuck with me now." She turned in his arms. "Tell me something I don't know." He considered. "The council wanted me to marry someone from one of the great houses, someone with political value. And instead, you got a refugee from a dying pack with dangerous magic." "And instead," he corrected softly, "I got the woman who saw my pain and chose to heal it anyway. Who faced down traitors and broke curses and saved me in every way a person can be saved." His forehead pressed to hers. "I got the love of my life." Aelith closed her eyes, remembering the girl who'd stood in that stone corridor months ago, terrified, sold for silver coins, certain she was walking to her doom. That girl wouldn't recognize her now. "I thought this marriage was meant to save the pack," she murmured. "When the council sold me, that's what they said." "And did it?" She thought about Valdris, stronger now. About Thornwick, which Calum had already begun sending aid to rebuild. About the future stretching before them, full of possibility. "I think it saved a lot more than that." Calum smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "Worth every moment," he said. She kissed him under the stars. And finally, after 18 years of hiding, Aelith let herself believe in happy endings. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below. Where are you listening from tonight?